It's my great honor to introduce our speaker today, Ashish Vatsal. He's the VP of Consulting Services and Business Development for EnergyRM. And Ashish employs more than a decade of multidisciplinary consulting experience to support and grow EnergyRM's portfolio of clients. He brings a unique mix of financial market knowledge and broad-based consultancy experience. Prior to joining EnergyRM, Ashish held multiple roles with the Boston Consulting Group, Point B, and an event-driven hedge fund. He holds a BS in computer science from Yale University and an MBA from the University of Michigan Ross School of Business. And on a personal note, I worked with Ashish at my time with Oregon Public Broadcasting when he was with Point B. And I'm very excited about the topic he's going to discuss today on the decarbonization of our portfolios. So with that, just a couple of housekeepings. When we get to the Q&A, I will pass the mic around just so we can get it on the recording, not because I think you speak too softly. And then also, we found that the doors opening and closing during the last session was didn't help for folks hearing the speaker. So I'm going to just ask if you're in here, if you can try to stay in here. And if you leave, if you can just do so very quietly, and we'll do a good job with the door management there. Thank you. Ashish.
Thanks, Bobby. Hello, everyone. My name is Ashish. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to start off with a poll here. For all the facilities managers in the room, if you know your building inside and out and could tell me over a cup of coffee all the things that it needs in terms of retrofits and upgrades, raise your hand. No one's raising their hands. All right. So you don't know your buildings that well. How about if you are facing any challenges with finding funding for those sources of retrofits and want to tell me about it over a drink instead? Yeah, those are the hands that are being raised. Fabulous. Well, that's the problem that we're here to solve. EnergyRM is the name of the company. We de-risk and simplify decarbonization for real estate owners. This is going to be not a traditional presentation. I'm going to start off with a case study, tell you how this works, and then go to Q&A. Let's start off with a case study. This is a project that I'm working on right now. It's a senior living facility based in Connecticut. It has costly, outdated, and inefficient building. It's spewing a ton of emissions, 500 plus metric tons of CO2 each year. It's an old building that costs about $44,000 a year in just O&M. And the long-term CapEx plan is going to be about $4 million for the building, just to maintain and upgrade this old, outdated equipment. The underlying causes are that it has an aging and failing cooling tower, periodic failures of the in-unit HVACs, which are, of course, very problematic for the senior citizens living in this facility, and a lack of a building control system that makes it run really inefficiently. On top of that, there's no on-site renewable power. It's an old, outdated building that costs a lot to maintain and is spewing a lot of carbon emissions. Here's a project that's being proposed. A comprehensive project proposal from EV charging units to in-unit HVAC systems, a building monitoring system to monitor everything, rooftop, ground, and built into the siding, solar. A new roof, new windows, lighting and envelope improvements, new kitchen hood control systems, and a new high-efficiency CO2 water heater. Touches the whole building, all parts of the building. The impact is the utility energy consumption is expected to drop by 91%. It's currently, you can see on the rightmost column, spewing using about 2,300 megawatt hours of combined electric and gas. That's going to go down to 200. So 91% drop. The electricity goes to zero. The only thing that's remaining is a kitchen gas cook stove. The benefits to the building, over 90% in emissions reduction, lower ongoing maintenance costs, all the backlog of improvements that the building wanted to do, paid for and done up front, increased comfort for the residents, green building marketability, and expanded amenities for all the residents, the staff, and visitors. That's for the building. For the parent company, no CapEx outlay, net zero without any investment risk, no cost to upgrade their equipment, new source of rent income, and no encumbrances if they wanted to sell the building. All of this is supposed to cost the building owner $10.5 million. It's going to cost them zero, and they're going to earn rent instead. How do we do that? Here's how it works. Here's the baseline. I'm going to take a step back and talk about the baseline problem that building owners are facing. They're getting pressure from institutional investors and their own tenants to decarbonize the building. But the financial investment cannot be justified because there isn't a sufficient recovery mechanism to get the payback back for the building owners, especially if you're talking, triple net leases. We are reframing this. The industry has seen decarbonization as an unrecoverable cost. We believe it is a tool for value creation instead. Now, if it is a tool for value creation, what's needed to decarbonize the building? Well, if you want to de-risk and simplify decarbonization for real estate portfolio owners, you need to make it possible for someone else to put in the money and to make it and to be a project investor, for project finance investors to invest in scale. And to do that, you need to create a new market-based asset class that is investable, that a project investor wants to come in and put in that $10.5 million. And that is what EnergyRM is. We are the data and transaction platform for creating and sustaining decarbonization as an asset. We can help target the buildings that are ripe for retrofits. We can help originate projects. We can measure the ongoing results, and we can monetize the benefits for the investor. Here's what we are not. We are not an ESCO or a project developer. We are not project finance. We don't put in our own money. You can think of us as fintech for decarbonizing real estate. I'm going to go one click deeper and get a little nerdy here for a second. To decarbonize a building's energy needs, we want to go from using just pure utility energy to using energy efficiency and on-site renewables to reduce the amount of energy that a building needs. And then you can optimize and offset the balance. To put it into pictures, if the previous situation is you're using only utility energy, we want to drop that down by, in this case, 91% through a mix of energy efficiency retrofits and on-site generation of solar. And then the balance that's left can be offset. What this does is while it keeps the energy expense neutral for the tenants, it creates a massive spread and savings that can be monetized. What used to cost you, let's just say 100 units, is now going to cost you 9 units. And that 91 spread can be monetized. I'm going to go into details on how that's done in a second. But before we do, there are 3 key roles that we need to talk about. There's, of course, the building owner, the one who owns the property. Then there is, on the bottom left, the project investor. These are the people who are putting in the money, in this case, $10.5 million, to do the retrofits, and the project developer who gets access to deal flow and larger projects than they would have otherwise. Here's the flow of funds. Step 1, on the left side, the project investor pays the project developer to do the retrofits. Great, straightforward. We sit in the middle, and then we'll build a building for that energy expense delta that we had talked about, which then it'll pay back to the platform. However, recovering it from the building tenants. So from the tenant's point of view, the energy expense remains as it was before. If they were paying X before, they're going to pay X after. What we then do is take that expense and distribute rent to the building. So the building is actually going to collect rent while distributing net revenues for that project investor. Here are the benefits to the building owners and the tenants. The building owner gets to decarbonize without taking on any investment risk. No cost equipment upgrades, no encumbrances to the building. They can sell the building later if they want. There's a simpler and faster project identification process. I can talk about that in a second. And having to avoided CapEx. You don't have to put in the $10.5 million out of pocket. And instead, earning a new source of income. Because this project investor is just like any other tenant in your building, except that they're a virtual tenant. They don't occupy physical floor space, and they're going to pay rent. The tenants have an energy expense neutral bill while getting upgraded facilities. They get more comfortable living spaces, and building improvements are enjoyed by everyone who's going to be in that building. It's a win-win all around. Now, we're not everything to everyone. In order for this to work, we need whole building energy data available for all the energy sources. We need to have a building that is weather dependent in its energy consumptions. For example, a data center or a heavy industrial manufacturing facility is probably not a great candidate. And we need a tenant expense recovery mechanism, most commonly a CAM. If it's a triple net lease and has a split incentive problem, not a problem for us. Frequently a good fit, commercial office, healthcare, senior living, and warehouses. Sometimes a good fit, open air retail, multifamily housing, enclosed stadium, and light industrial. And rarely a good fit, parking structures, heavy industrial, outdoor entertainment, and data centers. That bottom right category, the common thread there is there's really not a lot of juice to squeeze from energy efficiency. As I mentioned, to get started, here's the data that we need. 12 months of whole building utility bills, the building size in square feet, the building use type, how is it used, and the address. With that information at a portfolio level, we can identify the buildings that are going to be ripe for retrofits and move from there. I have a pretty short and sweet presentation. I'm open to taking questions at this point, though.
Where's your income from?
We get paid out of the project economics. Usually the project investor is who's going to pay us.
When you talk about the developer being a new source of, the financier being a new source of income for the building, are you talking that delta savings spread? Is that right?
That's right. Part of that comes from, so the question was, which I was supposed to repeat, where does the rent for the building owner come from? As I was mentioning earlier, there's that spread of going from 100 to, in this case, 9. There's a giant spread of 91 that's being created. Illustrative numbers here, let's say 86 of that goes to the project investor, and the balance of the 5 might be shared with the building owner. There's a negotiation that takes place up front. Here are some common questions that I get asked. As a building owner, I like these returns. Why don't I just pay for the project ourselves? Well, if you happen to have $10.5 million per building available, you may want to do that. On top of that, you have to take on the project risk. What if this doesn't perform? And then you have to become a general contractor, which is not the core business of a building owner. Who will the project investor be? Ignore the part in the parentheses. Typically, that is an organization that is looking to invest in decarbonizing real estate and looking for returns on top of that. In our case, we've got relationships with project investors who have earmarked hundreds of millions of dollars for projects like this. When projects are available and they pencil out, they're ready to move. Is a transaction REIT safe? I am not a lawyer, but we do have some precedents with IRS private letter rulings that says that it is. Do I need to amend existing tenant leases? No. No changes are needed whatsoever. If there's a CAM or another recovery mechanism for existing tenants, that's all we need. This just shows up as an energy service expense. Does this encumber the property? I talked about that already. It does not. You can buy and sell properties as you like. It's just another tenant in the building from the point of the building owner. What happens if we sell the building? How is this different from other options? ESAs, green leases, CPACEs, et cetera. The main challenge, those are all fine options. The main challenge that we've seen with that is it does encumber the building. It places a lien ahead of other shareholders, and that's generally something that buildings don't want to do. And which lease type and building does this apply to? We talked about the options in an earlier slide where this is the most relevant. Yeah?
What's the timeline on the project? I'm sorry. What's the timeline on the project?
How long does it reconstruct?
From start to finish. Let's say a portfolio, got a building, it needs some work from start to funding and construction. How long does that take?
I'm going to break that down into 3 basic steps. The first is you've got a portfolio of buildings. How long does it take us to identify projects, buildings that might be candidates for projects? It's software-based. It's a matter of hours, literally. We had a situation a few weeks ago where a very large portfolio owner sent us their entire portfolio of data on a Monday. We analyzed it, put it back together, and we're presenting it to them on Wednesday and saying, out of your entire portfolio, these buildings are probably not candidates. These ones are. So that's a matter of days. From there on, getting all the parties on board and getting through all the agreements and negotiations on the order of weeks to move forward. And then the construction, in this case, the project that I was talking about, that's about an 18-month timeline for doing the retrofit for the building. Did that answer your question, Toby?
Yes, except for up to the funding. So if you were to provide the portfolio then to funding the project, what's that timeline?
Funding the project, how long does that take? We've got agreements with investors right now, like I said, they're just waiting for the projects that pencil out. They'll typically put the money in an escrow amount up front, and then it's available for disbursement over that 18-month project timeline.
Right, but ultimately, project won't start till it's funded, right? It'll be sitting in escrow. Is it 8 weeks, 16 weeks, a year?
I don't know that level of detail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Could you go back to the slide that showed all it was the picture of the building with, 12 things?
Yep. I think I can do that. Might take a while. There we go. Yeah, this is all in scope for this building.
Ashish, when you're talking about folks sending you their whole portfolio of buildings and you can turn around, those answers of what are contenders in days, are you using metrics from those funders so you're not going to take people through the exercise if you have a high probability of it not getting funded further down the line? Is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. We're typically looking we'll do a quick analysis up front on do we think this is going to pencil out for an investor down the road? Of course, we have to do proper financial modeling later on, but if it isn't going to pencil out down the road, then it's typically not going to get caught. The criteria that we're looking for typically is a minimum of 25 to 30% in energy efficiency improvement. Below that, it's hard to make it pencil. This is an extreme example in 91% improvement. It's just actually not so extreme. It's just an old, inefficient building, but up to 25, 30% improvement will generally pencil out. So yes. Was there a question?
To make this work, solar has to be included, or just off the efficiencies, you could do it without the solar?
Solar helps a lot in this case. I don't know the specifics of if it works in every case or not. It's on a case-by-case basis. Typically what we found is it's usually just it's a really easy opportunity to add solar and increase the returns and increase the efficiency of the building. It doesn't have to be included in every case, but generally project developers and construction companies, they want to do the right thing for the building. They're just sometimes hampered by funding. And if they wanted to add solar, funding is no longer a constraint.
I want to ask a question, but I'm not quite sure it's fully formed, but I want to get it out there. Maybe you can take me down the path a little bit. But a lot of FMs are in owner-occupied buildings where there aren't any tenants but the organization they're working for. And how's that work?
Yeah. Good. Yeah. How does it work if it's an owner-occupied building and there isn't that split incentive between the landlord-tenant? The other challenge that we're still solving for is lack of capital availability. So if the owner is an owner-occupied building and is flush with unlimited amounts of cash and wants to take on all the risk themselves, not for us. But if it's an owner-occupied building and they're still constrained by capital, or even if they're not constrained, but the capital can be used somewhere else, this is an opportunity.
And could you repeat how you see EnergyRM? It's a fintech, is that right?
It's a fintech. We're a data and transaction platform for decarbonizing real estate. So we look at the data, we analyze it, and figure out, like you were asking, how do you identify those projects that'll pencil out roughly? But then we're also the platform on which the trust takes place. It's kind of like Uber. If you think about it, go back 20 years, getting into the car for someone you've never met to take you somewhere, it's a crazy idea. Unless you've got a platform that creates a trust that they've been vetted and someone's tracking you and you're safe in that situation, then it kind of pencils out. That's a transaction platform that we are. Both parties trust that this is taking place above board.
And then dollars and, sorry if I'm monopolizing the microphone, but dollars and cents wise, is all the work EnergyRM does on the front end, is that a function of pre-sales and you're only actually paid out any funds from when the deal's cut, kind of?
Typically, when we get started with building owners, what we will do is look at the portfolio data, but we also create what we call an owner profile, which is to understand what are your constraints, what are your risks. Are there certain buildings that are getting ready to be sold and we just shouldn't include them? What are your net zero goals? And we'll take all of that into account in making our recommendation for which buildings should be included and shouldn't. That's typically a paid engagement up front. Pretty minimal cost in the grand scheme of things. And then beyond that, the building owner doesn't pay anything more, and we are paid through the project economics of the project investor investing in the fund. What other questions are there? What's still not quite maybe clicking, or any concerns there might be?
That I wondered if you could go back to that slide that tells us what you are not. Like we're not a.
Yep, we're not an ESCO. We're not a project developer. We don't have a portfolio of buildings ourselves. There we go.
Yeah.
We're the platform where all the three parties, those three roles that I talked about, they all come together on our platform. Yeah, please.
So, maybe this project, I guess I'm curious, do you, thanks, appreciate it.
Who comes up with the project itself? Like, who's the expert that identifies the energy savings potential and actually creates the proposed plan? Is that in-house, or are you just connecting that with an expert?
We will do sort of the first level triage of just saying, these buildings you should probably look at. But then it's actually the project developer's job to go in, walk through the building, and do deeper analysis. Developers love it because we do that triage for them in a matter of days. What would have taken tons of manual walking through the building, looking at schematics and engineering plans to identify what would pencil out, we do it through software in a matter of days. But then beyond that, we step back and say, this is not our expertise. The project developer should actually develop the project in partnership with the building owner. The energy tenant also has the project investor also has a role to play in this because they're ultimately putting up the money. But it's really a collaborative effort between those three parties.
So do you have relationships with a series of specific developers, or are you connecting them with building owners? That's part of your role? Okay.
First thing I'll say is we're completely agnostic. We can work with any project developer, any building owner that faces a challenge, and any investor. We are not beholden to any one of them. That said, we do have relationships with certain project developers who like our platform and want to use this transaction structure because it removes the finance barrier and it gets to deal flow much faster. So we do have customers in that sense that will typically say, hey, this building is interested, maybe you should talk to them. But we don't have hard and fast relationships.
And I know, sorry, now I'm getting to monopolize it. Thanks. I noticed on that great slide that had all that particular project that seemed pretty complex. You're replacing the roof. How does that pencil into energy savings?
Went the wrong way. If I could slide through these faster, I have a slide at the end that goes into greater details for each one of the measures.
I'll make sure.
If there's a way to skip to one of the last slides faster, please do that. Otherwise, I'll be exercising my thumb for a couple of seconds here. Nope. There we go. These are all the details. So the roof is actually one of the lowest returns. However, if you include it with it was essentially, the roof in this case was needed because it was well past useful life, and there was going to be part of that $4 million in CapEx that was going to be spent. We said, don't worry about it. The project will take care of it. We need it because we're adding new solar on top of it. The new roof also allowed the opportunity to do the envelope improvements, which are a much higher level of savings. So these are some of the details into how we got to the savings. So we're getting to about 76% here, which you'll notice is not 91%. The balance 15% is through the on-site solar generation. That's the 76 plus the 15 from solar is how you get to 91%.
I had a question about, say, fast forward 10 years into after this project's completed.
Yep.
Maybe there's new owners, maybe, I don't know, different prevailing winds for the folks in the building or the ownership. And they decide, oh, you know what, we'd love to do something different with the solar or do this. And what are like the encumbrances on the actual improvements that have been done that would, the investor would say, hey, hold up, we got to stop? Or,
yeah. A couple of points there, Bobby. First off, all the equipment that's put into the building is owned by the building on day one. It is property of the building. Second, the project investor, the way to think about it is it's kind of like a personal trainer. They're incented to make you run better. They make the most money when the building is running efficiently and reducing its energy usage. So interests are aligned. They're the party that may occasionally come in and say, hey, building owner, hey, Bobby, this building of yours, it's been 10 years, there's a new type of boiler that might make a lot more sense. It's going to cost $4 million, but it's going to save a bunch of money. Should we do that? I'll pay for it, but do you think we should do that? And then in partnership, you'll talk about that on an ongoing basis. The third piece is up front when the contract is being negotiated, there's a buyout provision that can be negotiated as well that says, hey, 10 years down the road, we, the building owner, want to buy this whole thing back and capture all the upside from now on. And that'll be negotiated at a point based on market rates, but there is a space for negotiating that up front. Yeah.
Just to follow on, because I heard something there that you said everything's owned by the building owner day one. So what are you bringing in-house at year 10? Like the contract or?
All the upside.
All the
financial upside from that point on.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't clarify that. Good clarification. Any other questions? All right. I didn't mean to click on this, but this is really cool. I did not know this existed. You can do solar in 3 places in this building. There's a standard rooftop, those yellow pieces there. There's a ground mount solar, which in this case we know is not going to hinder parking spaces. And I didn't know this, but building integrated solar, where the siding of the building is also generating solar, but can be made to look like whatever siding you want it to look like. Yeah. The facilities managers, the facilities people's eyes lit up when they started seeing the scope of this. Yeah. All right, well, I will wrap up by simply saying, to recap, we are the transaction platform that sits between all these connected parties, and we take away the financial and risk barriers that hinder building owners from decarbonizing their buildings. We are the platform on which we take in the data and identify the buildings that are the most likely to be retrofit candidates, and then make sure that the financing is connected with the projects. I've laid several business cards around. I'm going to be here for lunch as well. I would love to talk with you and see if there's a fit. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you. Just one quick announcement. There is an SFP credential drawing happening. So there's entry forms out at the reception desk when you first came in. If you want to fill those out, you could win a free SFP credential valued at, what is it now, $1,500? Yeah, that the chapter would love to give away today. So, or if you just have a business card, you could throw that in there as well. With that, we have a little extra time and Ashish is available. Thank you.